again, I'm Tim Kretschman from Otherworldlyculture.com, and today we have an exciting panel for you. The classic Fright Night was released on August 2nd, 1985. It opened the same weekend as Weird Science, Phenomena, The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, and maybe it's counter-programming, Big Birds Follow That Bird. It opened third that weekend behind the juggernaut that was Back to the Future and National Lampoon's European Vacation for no reason whatsoever. It did edge out Weird Science and went on to be a pretty decent sized hit and then became a true cult classic. Now I introduce to you our panel discussion with the stars of Fright Night. William Ragsdale, who played Charile Brewster. Enough mics.
We'll share, Stephen and I. Hello. Okay, fine.
So let's start with, how did each of you meet Tom Holland?
Wow. On an audition, I guess. I can't even, Jackie Birch, who is still to this day beloved to us all, she's the casting director. And you actually just worked with her again.
Yeah, I just auditioned for Jackie a few days ago.
So she's the one who found all of us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And brought us in.
She was the initial person in getting us in the door.
So it was sold to you as a vampire movie. Were any of you vampire film fans?
No, I actually am not a vampire. They don't scare me at all. Other than the ones that are like Stakeland, those kind of ones that they're really animal vampires, those are good, but the gentleman vampires
Wow, learned something new about you, John. They freaked me out as a kid. They were the one monster that did, because they're so human, that it seemed so plausible to me. So coral snakes and vampires were my two nightmare sources.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the suspense, like Exorcist, Silence of the Lambs, and those movies are awesome. And the really, really old horror movies, the black and white. What about you, William?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, William.
I was a big horror fan growing up. I read Creepy and not Spooky. What was the other one? Eerie magazines. My dad had a drugstore, so I used to go through those. And I also love the classic horror films from Universal, and was a child of the 60s and 70s, so I knew Night Gallery and all of the Hammer stuff, and Count Yorga. And
The Legend of Boggy Creek.
Legend of Boggy Creek.
That?
Oh, that's an Arkansas film.
You don't hear about that too much anymore.
Right.
There are other people in the room.
Your mom's friends.
Yeah.
So I've always liked horror. But I like, unlike Jonathan, I like gentleman vampires. But also I like spooky as opposed to really sort of gory. That's mine.
Yeah, I think everybody in the room probably has that continuum as to how gory they like it and how much suspense. And I think the fans of Fright Night might be moving toward the suspense side, but there was some incredible special effects in there. And I know at least two of you had some trouble with makeup, if I remember correctly. And
Billy?
Billy was heavily made up.
Still am.
You're talking about the contact lens
The
story?
contact lenses.
Yeah, well, you know, this was practical effects, which is having a resurgence these days. It's coming full circle a little bit off of all the CGI, which is unbelievable. But we were guinea pigs because they were always, and Richard Edlund was top of the game back in that day, and they were always trying to outdo one another. And we were the sacrificial lambs, really. And I don't wear contact lenses, and I didn't then. And so I had 3 different pairs and kind of didn't really know what to expect, and they were all painted differently as the character of Amy transitioned as a vampire. And the last pair went in, and they put them in at the last minute, and you could barely see out of them, but just enough. And this pair was driving me crazy, and I was trying not to hold things up or distract from all the work that's getting done so we can roll. And but it just got just unbearable, and I just kind of went, hello. And they took them out, and they'd forgotten to sand the back of the lens for the paint. So I'm really kind of glad I spoke up because I can still see. But, you know, and I was 6 hours in the chair. Sarandon was 10, right? 8 to 10 when he was in his full regalia. But that's what it took. And we had these madmen, makeup artists and special effects guys. They were insane.
And it was just fascinating. Look at them, like they're painting a canvas, and they had that kind of look in their eyes, like kind of like you said, crazy. And but they were just so good and so talented. And I mean, I totally trusted them. And
Wasn't there's something though that something didn't taste right or something for you?
Oh,
Something
yeah.
with the werewolf transformation?
what happened now?
They put the wrong stuff in your mouth.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, he pulled some joke on me during that. Yeah, they were. They were kooky at that time, and but it all kind of fit in to the whole thing. You know, I mean, it was sitting in a chair for 16 hours, getting hairs put on you, and it's just not human. So you just kind of surrender to the madness, you know.
I assumed they were mostly whacked out on coke or something most of the time. I don't know.
I thought that was you. Way to try and deflect that. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually gave me, I think, Valium or something at the beginning to just like fall asleep. But you know, when you're sitting in a metal chair in a cold, warehouse kind of, it was tough.
Chris spent so much time in the chair that they eventually let him do his own hands, because that was something that could keep him
Oh, that's
occupied.
right.
And he had those finger extensions.
Latex fingers.
My understanding is he used to do his own makeup when he was in the theater, and
Well, you do.
that's why he.
One does.
Well done.
No, I mean, unless it is a special effects kind of thing in the theater. But yeah,
Well,
we all came from the theaters.
and in this movie, if I remember correctly, there was something about there were 2 weeks of rehearsal, and that's more of a theater thing. Usually you go out there and it's just go. Did that help, and what did you develop during those 2 weeks?
Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, up to that point, I think I did 2 movies beforehand, and what worked for me was just walking to the set, and I prepared. I mean, every actor's different, I don't know, but I, for the first movie I did, Heaven Help Us, I had no idea what I was doing, to be honest. All I knew was direction in the script that my character was a weasel, and I just went with that, and it worked out great. I mean, I just had, and I think when an actor is cast for especially a film, they're pretty much right when they walk in the door. I think that, of course, unless you're doing, Richard III or something, and you really have to, add all these different layers. But so these guys wrote really lengthy life stories, and I guess it helped.
Thanks, Stephen, for that vote of confidence. But we were actually just talking about this yesterday, which is why I pointed at him, because he was sort of forced into it.
He got sent to the principal's office.
He did. He got called out on it, and he was like, "So I wrote a bunch of." But I had an unusual experience because I was auditioning with 16 and 17-year-old girls, and I was 26 when I made Fright Night, and I'm looking down the row going, I don't buy it. I don't buy me for 1 minute. But because the character of Amy got to go through such a wonderful arc with, this journey, and at one point, she has to kind of grow up. And so that played in my favor.
I got to deal with Chris and I for 2 weeks while we were rehearsing. First, it took me 3 or 4 days to stop trembling because I was such a fan from Dog Day Afternoon. I just couldn't believe how great he was. But we got to explore the relationship and how long from 800 years back. So we had all this information. I wish I could remember what it was. I can't, but it was, to me, it was very beneficial. And it was just fun hanging with Chris and talking.
How many pages was that? 800 years of research?
I have 7 volumes.
The value of that thing was that exercise, which you do a lot in theater, I guess, is that it got everybody on the same page. We all knew where every actor was coming from and what we were going to encounter, when we encountered these characters. So it was valuable in that sense, and it's very rare. They actually marked out we sort of knew the pattern of the rooms and stuff because they marked it out on the soundstage for us to rehearse them. So it was, then you didn't have to worry about where you were going then when you finally got there. You knew.
But what was the same page? Was there like a central? What was the central theme? I mean, this is a very different vampire movie from a lot of them. We're still talking about it this long afterward. What is it that made Fright Night a classic that we're still talking about?
Me.
John and Chris's chemistry.
Well, it's the storytelling, I think, always, because if it's not there on the page, it's not gonna happen on the camera. And Tom Holland was so clear in his vision and wanting to take us on his journey. But if for no other reason, you just get comfortable with one another. And when you're spending hours in makeup chairs and then you're thrown into the scene and you do it really quickly, and so it built these relationships and these connections with one another. And I think that plays in the film, because to me Fright Night has a lovely level of humanity about it. And then you suspend your disbelief when you go into this, when the horror takes over. But it's really kind of about the boy next door, and then this really fantastical, horrific thing that happens to him. And I think that's not typical.
I was saying that to some people I've told that I remember mostly that we laughed so much. We were always laughing about something because everybody here was so funny. And before a lot of the scenes, especially the scene where we all did together, we were out of control, and Tom started yelling at us because he's like, you can't, you got to do, this is scary, you can't be laughing.
He was so dead serious, and that's partly why he wanted the rehearsal. It was his first, big directorial project, and he wrote it, so he was kind of nervous, so he wanted that insurance that we were prepared.
And Chris was the worst of all of us. Chris was always goofing around.
Yeah.
It's just interesting in regard to what you said, why it's been around. I think that partly because of that rehearsal or whatever, I think every character is sympathetic in some way. That is not always true of horror and monster movies, is that everybody's got a story and you kind of feel for them. Everybody's in a situation that they would like to change, they can't, they're trying, and so you're kind of rooting for everyone. So I guess maybe that helps.
And it was funny. It was a funny, there were deliberate funny moments in the script. And so there is that balance of this real lightness of being with these moments of terror.
Well, you were saying how seriously he took it. I'm like, sometimes comedy is more serious than
Well, you
drama.
can't play the funny. You know, that'll kill comedy in a heartbeat. You can't play to the funny. You play the reality.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it comes out of the humanity and good writing and instinctual performances and, you know, yeah.
Now, I just did some calculations over here, and the statute of limitations is up, so I do need to ask, did any of you make off with something from the set?
I got my tips. You always want to go there, John. No, but I really wish I kept my fangs. Cut it out.
She was selling her fake boobs.
I had them in a C's candy box for 20 years. And we started doing these on the 20th anniversary. Yes, 2005, the 20, that's, and I mean, we hadn't seen each other in pretty much 20 years. And I all those things out. And I just thought, what am I gonna, you know?
She had all her pictures laid out, and then the boobs.
Because and that was an interesting moment because I was thinner then, and Tom wanted her to be more voluptuous when I got into that white dress. And so these nerdy guys had to put plaster on me one morning at 4 o'clock, and that's, you know, and then there were resin hardened, yeah. And I don't know why, but I kept the boobs. I guess I just didn't want anybody else to have them.
She kept them, and she kept them in this candy box. So she was going to sell them or
It was an
auction
auction.
them.
I was trying to have fun with them. Yes.
Yeah, so she had them on her table, which is fine. You know, it's an auction for a, you know, whatever nice event or something like that. But you don't realize until people start coming to your table and picking up the boobs, and kind of looking at them, feeling them a little bit, and think, oh, maybe this wasn't such a great idea.
Well, and then the character from Silence of the Lambs, seriously, is like the dude that bought him. And so John never lets me forget that. He's like, you enjoy those now. Oh, my, yeah. Did y'all steal anything? I mean, I didn't really steal it. It was my property. I felt like...
I took the skull that skidded along the floor, and I had it in my garage for years in a box. I couldn't even find it. And I mentioned it to Tom, and he said, "Well, I got to have that." So I finally weeded through some boxes and found it and gave it to him. But that's all I really had.
Because he collects everything.
He does.
And somebody came to the table. I don't know if you're here. Yes, who did the box?
Oh, yeah, that
the
box
Peter
is
Vincent
great.
box. Are
Yeah,
y'all
I
in
saw
here?
it.
No. And Tom regrets to this day that he didn't keep that kit, you know, Peter Vincent's vampire kit. But he's got a lot of the monster heads and...
He has all the original Chuckies too. All those.
Wow. Now, do any of you get stopped with quotes that fans always shout out to you? I knew that was going to
What was the question?
do you get stopped with fans shouting out quotes to you?
Do you have any famous quotes from the film?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was living in New York City, and I'd be like taking a cab somewhere, and I'd start talking, you know, take me to 34th, and the guy would turn around and like, because I guess I have a distinctive voice, and that would all the time that happened.
Didn't somebody on the subways stop?
And on the subways, the kids are kind of New Yorker kids are sort of rambunctious and, but they'd be, oh, there's that dude from Fright Night, do that laugh, and it was horrifying. I'd have to get off at the next stop, whether or not it was, the correct one, but it was fun. What the heck? It's better than a kick in the head.
I keep getting, hey, old guy, the line's moving. But I don't think that's a quote. I think that's just...
Well, we brought up the character, and it's time to talk about the man. How was working with Roddy McDowall?
He was a delight. He was very accessible and very welcoming, and humble's maybe not the right word, but he was just an equal. It really felt like you were working with an equal, which none of us were. And the great thing, one of the great things about it was he was just an encyclopedia of movie history, of actor lives, and and he would share that between takes. We'd start talking, and they'd be ready for a shot, but he hasn't finished his story yet. So we're like, okay. So it was really enriching. He knew Laurel and Hardy. He knew all of these. Everyone.
He made videos too, didn't he?
Yeah, lots of. He had a video camera that was like this big that he would, the backpack that he would walk around, and he took a lot of videos of our backstage sort of stuff, and which is now lost as far as we know. But yeah, he was wonderful. He was a really nice, generous, lovely guy.
He was a lot like the softness of Peter Vincent. I felt that it was close, and I didn't really know him that well. I had a couple of scenes with them, and Billy spent probably more time on camera working with him. But he really had that just kind nature, and just no pretentiousness whatsoever, just none. And again, it just put us all at ease. He and Chris both were just true gentlemen, because we were all kind of in the same place, just beginning our careers, and yet there was no hierarchy. And I think that camaraderie, that kind of community, is there in the film.
I don't really remember, but I think I recall that he didn't have to write a character history. Did he?
You're kind of bitter about that.
I don't remember him being there, but...
Well, I do remember him saying, there was something about him that he was in these iconic films. He was iconic. He knew all the A-listers, but he was never that level of a movie star. And so he had this understanding and this, empathy, sympathy for a B-actor. Because in a sense, he had that.
He had lived that, yeah.
Yeah, he had lived that.
And
so
Tom,
maybe
yeah.
that's what you...
Tom tells the story that he was a child star, and, and the transition was, once you reach that sort of late puberty, teenage years, it's hard for every actor, and Roddy went through that as well, and never really, and really only around the time of Fright Night was starting to get back into being, aside from Planet of the Apes and stuff like that, was to being a recognizable face again, and he did Overboard with Goldie Hawn, and so he was really got reignited from that stuff. So, but he knew something about in that sense, knew Peter Vincent's story.
You also have a lot of time sitting around. That's more time than anything, is you're just sitting there waiting for your scene or your shot or whatever. And Roddy always had stories. He would just sit there and tell stories. And I honestly don't remember any of them, but I remember thinking, oh my God, you should write a book.
The thing I learned in my research with Roddy McDowall is he probably didn't write a book because he knew more secrets than anybody in Hollywood, and he kept them.
He said he would never write about it.
Yeah, I remember him quite a few times speaking of how he disliked Rex Harrison. He really did not like that guy. and and I remember him saying, and it's a couple other actors who he wasn't really fond of. So that was awesome.
Present company.
Well, I would think you would have some sympathy for some of you with makeup, because he went through some pretty bad makeup for a very, very long time.
I can't imagine.
Okay, he went through all the Planet movies,
Yeah.
and then the TV series. That was on and off for almost a decade, is that about right?
Yeah.
So, interesting. There are rumors I have to ask about, or everybody will get me.
No.
Never happened. Never happened.
No,
Whatever
this
you're gonna
is-
say.
I'm just asking if, is there any fact behind that there might be sequel, Resurrections, that's being worked on?
Well, I keep in touch with Tom, and he sent me the first draft of his novel called Fright Night Aftermath. It takes place immediately after, that's minute after the original one ends. I liked it a lot. I thought it was terrific. And I don't know, he said he was going to send it off to the publisher. I haven't spoken to him lately, but then he said, well, I've got another one in my head that I want to call Fright Night Billy's Bones. And I said, well, that should be interesting. I mean, I don't think you can bring me back, but you'd have to bring somebody that looks like me back. But a younger me, maybe.
He's still percolating, and it's still living in him, whether or not it translates to a...
Yeah, they're novels. They're not, they're not screenplays.
They're not. I have to ask about this as well, the Fright Night reboot. Any opinions on the Fright Night reboot?
Well, I think I said to some of you all that Chris Sarandon, I think, put it wisely in that it wasn't a remake, it was more of a reimagining, because it didn't have the relationship to the film that one would have thought. And as a standalone horror movie, I thought it was a good film. It's not my genre. I thought it was kind of one dark note. It was hysterical to see Chris show up on screen. I got a big kick out of that. Didn't know that was going to happen. And I thought there was some really interesting, putting it in Vegas at the time when that was a really depressed real estate market, and then having Peter Vincent's character be that sort of David Angel, kind of magician type of character. But it didn't, first of all, part of the kitsch of Fright Night is the 80s, so it's kind of hard to grab that and put it out there again in a completely different millennium. But what did y'all think?
I thought there were good parts of it. I was really disappointed in the Peter Vincent character, because what made that character so interesting was the vulnerability and the need to try and be a better person, or to try and do better, but who was scared. And it didn't come through to me anyway with that particular portrayal. They're all good actors. They were all excellent actors. It was just, I think, a misfire in that particular area.
I called John to see if he wanted to go see it, and he said, "Yeah, but I'm out of the country. I'll see it when I get back. When I get back in 3 weeks or so." I said, "I don't think it's going to be here."
We did go see it.
We did?
We had lunch and we went to see it, and as we were going in the theater, this had only been going about 2 weeks, and they were taking down the poster, and we were the only ones in the theater.
Oh.
So we were like, oh, I'm probably not going to do well.
Yeah, it was good. I just seen this T-shirt here. The ad campaign for the movie was the exact same as ours. The same face, the house with the face and all that stuff. And so I was living in LA then, and driving around following buses with Fright Night ad on the back, and I'm whatever, not the kid anymore, and I'm like, this is like surreal, yeah, I mean it was fine.
Yeah,
Did you see it?
I finally did, and it felt like we were being violated.
I thought that was the good part.
But it's like, we already did this, and it just didn't, personally, it just didn't seem right that it was being told again. I mean, every character in ours was just, you felt something for, and I didn't get that. I mean, and even the effects were kind of stupid.
I thought Sarandon was one of the best parts.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. When Chris showed up, it was like, yes, there's some. Talking anymore.
It was lovely. That's an answer to the question.
By the way, speaking of Chris, I just texted him a while back, and I said I sent him a picture of us. We were all flipping him the bird, and he said, "Oh, where are you guys?" I said, "Pittsburgh." He said, "Oh, I don't think I was invited to that." I said, "Yeah, I actually called you and asked you if you were going." But he sends his regards to everybody.
That's great. Well, I have some questions for some of you as follow-ups. With you went on to Fright Night 2, and unfortunately the rest of the cast was killed off or explained away. What was the making of Fright Night 2 like? It had to be extremely different.
It was, yeah, I mean, they sort of wiped the slate, as you say, of the other characters, so it was like, okay, well, you don't think too much in terms of where are they now, because, that's the purpose of the sequel, I guess, is to kind of go on to another adventure. But it was fine. It was good knowing, because Roddy and I knew each other, and it was good to know that that chemistry worked and that the basic storyline worked. So, I was excited about that. I kind of prefer stories that bring the history into it, but that was not always the case in the 80s. So,
Yeah. So your classic TV series Herman's Head was featured recently on Only Murders in the Building. If everybody caught that cameo,
please.
Well, tell us about it. I didn't know.
Well, we were up for a SAG award. I didn't want to bring it up. No, they just used this, for Herman's Head, they used a scene from it. I got a call from my, what we used to call a call, it's now an email, from my agent saying that they're going to use this portion of a clip and you have to sign and say, okay, that's fine. So, so that's what happened. I wasn't really sure what was going to be involved. Has anyone seen the series Murders in the Building? It's anyway. The one of the leads was my old girlfriend from the '80s, and she's now a middle-aged woman. And one of the other characters was a friend of mine from the '80s who is now a late middle-aged guy. And so it was weird to see my friends on a show and me on a show, but I'm 20 plus years younger than they are. I'm frozen in time and they've moved on in their life. So that was kind of jarring. And one of the purpose of the clip was that this middle-aged woman is remembering her youth and a show she saw in her youth. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's where we are. But thanks for bringing it up.
Well, unfortunately, it's not streaming anywhere. I was like,
Right.
oh, it's finally streaming, and I looked around.
No, you'd think that maybe that would, somebody would wake up and say, oh.
Well, I thought too when Inside Out came out, which is the same thing. I was like, why didn't they make the dad be your voice? And
I didn't think about that. Yeah, that would have been great. Maybe they'll make a sequel of that.
that movie made $175 million. So yes, it did.
It's not all about the money, man. Are they here? No.
Well, Herman's Head was, I think, the second season that Fox Network was up and running, but I believe Amanda beat you one season
Did you guys start before
earlier.
Yeah, of
I
course you
think
did.
Mary started the first
Yes,
season.
we launched.
Did you?
Fox. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I think you were after Werewolf, in fact.
Well, it was, there was one night of primetime programming. The only thing that Fox was the Joan Rivers show,
Right.
which then became the Arsenio Hall show, which then became UPN and a whole other thing.
Well, Tracy Ullman was on.
It started with 21 Jump Street, which wasn't technically in prime time. It was 7 to 8 o'clock with Johnny Depp. And then there was a lineup of 3, 4 sitcoms, and then Tracy Ullman at 10. And the first night that it aired in April, they played 3 of the shows 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Because and Fox was syndicated. It was our first publicity campaign was, can you find your Fox station? Because it was like channel 24 or 32 or something like that. And that's how it launched. And then that one night was, watch the show, watch it again. If you missed it, here it is again. And, but it wasn't until a couple of years into the network, or the syndicated network itself, that people started finding it, because ABC, CBS, and NBC would rerun, and we started gaining momentum in the summertime, because to them we were new programming. It was like, what's this? I haven't seen this 3 times already. And I don't remember what, Billy was on the lot. We were on the same lot. I remember getting to see you.
Yeah, I came.
What year did you start?
We started in '91.
Okay, well, we started in '87, so
Yeah,
it
so
was
you've been
a
on.
few,
Okay,
yeah,
so it was
yeah.
a few more seasons.
Older generation. The
I
first year I
was good
did.
for '84, so.
The first year that it was on Fox, I grew up in Arkansas in kind of a rural area, and they couldn't get it. So I had to make tapes to send my parents so that they could watch the TV show.
And I think on Herman's Head you had a couple of the Simpsons actors.
Yeah,
And,
Yardley and-
it was just starting. Simpsons Mania was just starting about that time.
Yeah, because Simpsons was a commercial bumper in and out of Tracy Ullman show. It was just a little strip.
And they looked very different in those little bumpers, and they got refined before they went.
And they've made, what, 300,000?
I was just going to say,
Episodes.
they've been on 30 something. You say, yeah, since then.
Yep.
Well, you were
Beginning
on for 11 with children, right?
Yeah.
11 seasons.
Yeah, we shot the show for 10 years. And because it was Fox, which was what we made fun of all the time, it was 11 seasons. Okay? Yeah.
And I believe we're talking sitcoms. Jonathan, you were involved with a sitcom as well, according to Jim, correct?
I created it
Creative.
along with my former writing partner Tracy Newman. Yeah, and that ran for 192 episodes, I guess.
Any stories?
Oh yeah.
Those are bar stories.
I'm gonna put the mic.
Expound on that.
All right, and Stephen, you were in one of my favorite movies, Moon 44, that a lot of people haven't checked out. It was it the first movie by Roland Emmerich? Or?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it was his very first.
And he met Dean Devlin on that.
Dean was
he was an actor
just
at that time.
regular actor.
And for those of you that don't know, that team went on to make Independence Day, Godzilla, Stargate, The Patriot, and they didn't call you. What's going on there?
What's that?
For any of those films. Must have grown really close
He
during.
wouldn't do the bio. He said, do the bio. You can be the
It's weird because like Roland met me at the Frankfurt airport when I got there, and I heard through people that he kind of liked me, which of course now I'm thinking I should have taken advantage of that, it was I was having it was an interesting period in my life, but Roland is intense. I mean he's super intense. There wasn't a lot of laughing on that set, but you know, it's
What was the movie? I don't think I know.
Moon 44.
Moon 44?
I got a copy out.
What's it about?
it's like a kind of a Star Wars type thing, and good against evil, and we shoot other spaceships, and
He's bullied quite a bit in it. It's a
What's
little
that?
you're kind of bullied in that movie. It's actually a very good performance of being bullied.
yeah, I have a scene with a rat, don't I, or a mouse?
Yeah, you do have that too.
Very touching.
Yeah, it's a great movie. You should seek it out. I think it's available on a couple of the streamers. But you know, really, a lot of you have television experience, and certainly in the entertainment industry. How different are things now with all this streaming and 3,000 networks out there compared to, you know, both of you being involved at the beginning of Fox, where it was a big thing. Oh my God, there's a fourth network. And now there's a network every couple of feet, it seems. Well, what's the biggest difference? Is there more opportunity, less? What?
Yeah. And yet we still can't get a job. It is fascinating. I've been involved with television for more than half the life of the industry itself. And so to watch that happen in terms of the technology and how, you know, I remember the Betamax and did you have a Betamax?
You remember the old kinescopes, right?
Yes, and you know, when I was directing, when HD came around, and they didn't know how to do that on a television multi-camera set, and they didn't know whether to call people by the terms that videotape used as opposed to film, because there were different terms for different positions and the crew. And eventually the film lingo won. But initially I was directing a show, Reba McEntire's first show called Reba. And it was one of the first HD shows shot. And that was a real interesting experience to come and be a part of the beginning of that, which is now the way it is. That's all there is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
film not utilized very often either. It's all
Right, it's too expensive. But I was shooting multicam film, which had 4 dollies and three camera people. It was involved, and so HD changed everything, which is why there's such an abundance of programming out there, because it's so immediate, readily available, and cheap to make.
Yeah.
And now features are, more often than not, shot on HD, not on film.
It's interesting too that it's not just streaming stuff, but you know, everyone in here has a phone with a camera that can make a video, you know, right now. And I, you know, when you pass people all the time making videos of themselves, I mean, that's an entertainment channel. Gaming is an entertainment channel that my kids will watch, or rather go play a game than watch, you know, a movie sometimes, you know. So it's exponential. It's not just that there's more of the same thing going on. It's just an infinite variety now. There's a show for every person with a camera. So, you know.
And things are not geared towards, like in film, I mean, the mecca is still the large screen, but a lot of programming is created to be watched on your phone, to be consumed on a small screen. On
Mobile.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it dictates everything now.
So you're all still very active. I want to ask if there's any projects that you want to let people know about that are going on. Going down, if you don't have to sign the NDA, tell us about it.
I actually, after Married with Children ended, and I've talked about this with some of you, they gave me my second career as a director, so I stopped acting after that show, and for 30 years was behind the camera, directing television, mostly comedy, and then Hollywood decided that I was not going to do that anymore, seriously, and that's in my book. And no, but I just decided a couple of years ago to start acting again. So I made a couple of features, small roles in features last year. One is with John Heater, who's Napoleon Dynamite, and it'll come out when it gets a distribution deal, I guess. It's called Topper Wingo, and then I made a film with Billy Eichner, who did a show on Hulu called Difficult People, and it's Judd Apatow's company, and he's written and starring in it, and it's funny when you go away for 25 years and come back on screen. I'm now the mom. So, but again, it's been fun. It's been nice. So that one's called Bros, and it'll be out in September.
Anything? All right, I think that's my indication that it's time to go to the audience. If we have any questions out there from...
And no, I don't know what I was, so.
I was ready to shut that one down. I was ready to shut that one.
Okay, time for inappropriate questions.
Yes.
Can we hear your infamous laugh?
Catch me after the show.
I'm going to be standing there though, waiting.
He did it at a con in Dallas or something, and I think by the 40th person who came up to say, "Can you do the laugh?" he said, "I can't do the laugh."
You know, like during filming, I hated doing it. I mean, Tom had to actually shake me and said, because I kind of crossed it out because it. I mean, it was so
a suggestion.
It's like I took it. It was so obnoxious, and I didn't want to play an obnoxious character. But he said, "No, Steve, that's how it's supposed to be." So, I was forced to do it, and and like I said before, when people stopped me, like on the subway, and said, "Do that laugh," and they kind of huddled around, and they wouldn't let me go until I did it. Yeah, so
A laugh hostage.
Yeah, PTSD.
Jonathan can do his laugh if that's.
Oh, okay.
We have one back there.
Sure. For any or all of you, have you watched Fright Night since the premiere? And if your friends or relatives want to watch it, do you sit down and watch it with them? What do you think?
Oh, sure, I have. I'll often throw it on Halloween, just have it playing there, just for fun. My daughter loves it. She's almost 30.
Okay.
And yeah, and I think I had someone in my life that had not seen it, and I actually watched it all the way through. And it's entertaining. Watching it, it's sort of like, this is your life, that was your life. But also the fact that we are all still with one another after all this time, because again, and what's that, 17 years now that we've been doing these conventions. And so it's kind of the whole experience of it for us.
I've only seen it twice. I never saw the premiere because they all went to the premiere. I left town because I thought it was going to suck so bad. I was afraid that I was going to have to walk up that aisle in shame. So I went to New York. And the only time I've ever seen it is twice, and only on the small screen. So I've never really had the experience, and probably some of you have seen it on a larger screen. But
I thought they had that showing of it in Westwood.
They did at the New
Art.
Or the New Art.
I was out in the lobby. I didn't watch it.
No, I mean, like, decades later.
I don't think I saw it though. I
They
don't
had
think
a
I
new
sat
print.
there.
Sony had given them a new
I
print.
knew the story. I know how it ended.
No surprise.
Got you there. They did a Sony, or whoever owns Sony now, did a new print of it in like 2010, 9 or 10 or something, and showed it at the New Art, which is a theater in LA, and it was beautiful. I hadn't seen it on a big screen like that in years. I'd only seen it, on the tapes or the DVD or whatever, and it was really beautiful. It was really impressive. My skin was amazing.
We have
whenever you're working on a film or a TV show, do you know in the moment if it's going to be great, or do you have to wait until the end and hope that it turned out the way you wanted it to, or you have to wait for the audience reactions? Is there a feeling when you're working on it if you know it's really something special?
This was a special, and we've talked about this, a special experience for all of us. We just really enjoyed ourselves, and it had a little bit of magic to it. We knew that without really having any frame of reference, because we didn't really have careers yet. And so, I mean, it's delightful that here we are these decades later. But then there's an element of it that's not wholly surprising, because the energy behind it when we were making it, it's still there. And so there's something about that. You're a writer, so I don't know what your experience is. I know when, as a director, when things are working and when they're not. And again, I believe that if it's not on the page, if it's not in the writing, no matter how many bells and whistles you try to add to it, it's never really going to quite be.
But I would also add, Tom wrote an amazing script. He really did, there's no question. But you can write a great piece, and if you don't have the right actors, it will not. So this was a combination of a great script and the exact right people to do it.
That's true. That's true of every phase of it too. I mean, the production team, the editing, the people who edit it, the people who make it. That's our stage of the process. Who puts it together and how they market it. There's so many phases of what goes into making something successful. That you can have our chemistry or our writing or both, and it still can come out flat. It's
When I
luck
did
sometimes.
my first movie, I was doing a play at the time, and I could not believe how many other people are involved with the whole project. I mean, when you do a play, you rehearse for 6 weeks and whatever, and all the standing at the right place, and it's just amazing that your fate is in the hands of so many other people, especially in a horror film. Yeah.
Well, and Fright Night was lightning in a bottle. It's not, you can't, I was surprised when people always say, well, what about the remake? And you go, well, what do you expect? It's not, you can't make the same thing. It's impossible. It was the time, the people, the direction, everything like that. It's just something like, it's like baking a cake. You don't know if it's going to come out correctly, and because there's a whole lot of things afterwards. You've got editing, and you've got studio notes, and you've got all this other stuff that could screw something up. But apparently, according to Tom anyway, they pretty much left him alone, which was the best thing that could have happened to this movie.
Yeah, seeing it for the first time was just amazing, because I mean, I had no idea what these guys were doing behind the scenes, so to speak, for a year.
Yeah, and just a component of that, an example of that is Amy's mouth, her shark mouth there, which is now iconic. It's on the posters and everything. That was like a night before decision. Tom had said to Randy or to one of the special effects guys, I want her to turn around and there's this big gaping large shark mouth, and that was it. And it hadn't been.
He made it happen.
And he made it happen, like literally overnight, and that's, what if you hadn't had that thought or that decision, and what if that thing is not associated with the movie at all? Then the movie might have still worked, but it's a component that you just there's a mercurial sort of muse that happens.
Yeah, I love spontaneity as opposed to writing character histories. All the energy comes together, and it's like when I saw that for the first time, it was like, that's right. That's what should happen. It was the right thing at that moment, and
And I grew it overnight. It was all Tom, and he knew he was missing a moment. He was missing a moment, and that's the way he describes it. And so, and he's fortunate that it wasn't 6 months after we filmed, because you don't
Yeah,
go
once-
back and get
if
that.
we were broken, it wouldn't have.
Right.
But that was part of the fun of it too. I can still remember you walking on the set with that. We were laughing so hard, and you were trying to talk, and you couldn't talk very well. But that was what was fun about it.
And I remember you going to lunch with that thing on.
No way. I had to go to lunch. They put the steak in me, and then they put this thing around me to hold the steak out. It's like out to here, and it's like lunch. Well, I have to go to I'm in the commissary trying to eat with a steak sticking out.
Would you like some fries with your? No, never mind.
Thanks for laughing.
I think we're at that time. I would really want to thank our panel. They are available in the main room. They're not in the guest signing room. They're in the main room. And check them out. They're all sitting next to each other, very convenient for you. And just a delightful group. Let's show them how much we appreciate it.
All right, woo-hoo.